titled The Failed Utopian Experiment, Why the United States is Dystopia. So my research paper focuses on how the United States was created to be the perfect society, and how it has instead shown to be a dystopia throughout history. The dystopian elements of the United States could lead to a future where democracy no longer exists. My book, The Selection, by Kira Cass, will serve as an example of one future that the United States may encounter. First, I want to give a brief summary of The Selection. The book takes place in the future United States, and the government has become a monarchy. The country is divided into a caste system where each person is ranked between 1 and 8. Depending on one's wealth and occupation, a person may live a life of leisure and wealth, or hunger and poverty. The monarchy holds what they call the selection for the next heir to the throne. Prince Maxim is this next heir, and he needs to choose between 35 girls who he will make the next queen. Throughout the story, it is made clear that there is unrest throughout the country and that the government is starting to crack. I chose the book because of the scandal that has developed around the 2016 election. I thought the book was fitting because it depicts a future version of the United States where our current government no longer exists. It made me wonder if it was possible for our government to crumble. Current events have created lots of domestic and international unrest that could potentially spark future changes. Personally, I disagree with everything that President Trump has done, and it sparked my interest in wanting to know how he won the election. Once I started looking at statistics that came out when he was elected in November, I started realizing that there was more to the whole picture than one candidate losing the popular vote. As I started looking into the creation of the United States government, I realized that there were many aspects of the creation that could be considered striving for perfection. This is when I realized that you could say that the United States was created to be a utopia and eventually failed to become one. The Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This seems pretty idealistic, and it didn't hold throughout time. This can be seen when Native Americans and slaves were targeted, as well as currently when it comes to people who are part of the LGBTQ community, the Islam community, immigrants, or even many Hispanics. This single line in the Declaration of Independence shows that what could have been a country of freedom for all, where everyone is welcomed, has instead dissolved into a country with many flaws. The Declaration of Independence is only a small part of why the United States government can be considered a dystopia. Another comparison one can make is between the United States and the common structure a dystopian novel has. Dr. Fitzsimmons showed us the flow of how a dystopian trilogy evolves. The trilogy begins with a closed society where the protagonist goes through a rite of passage that leads them to learn that there is a larger system that controls their own society. There is then a violent confrontation that ends with a victory for the society. However, this victory comes with the protagonist having to sacrifice something. Looking at the United States, you have the closed society, which was the 13 colonies, and the colonies were isolated in the new land they lived in. The rite of passage, in the case of the 13 colonies, was the writing of the Declaration of Independence. The colonies made a statement that they no longer wanted to be ruled by the English monarchy, and this is what sparked the Revolution. The American Revolution was the violent confrontation that led to the United States gaining their freedom. The sacrifices made with thousands of people that died, but it ended with overcoming the larger system. However, the story of the United States has not yet ended. In The Selection, the book hints at a country where democracy has failed. But the monarchy that was created is portrayed as pretty unstable. And I then was wondering if we could now be facing the beginning of the failure of the current United States government. Articles have recently been published stating that the United States is now a flawed democracy. According to an NBC article that was released in January, the main reason the United States is now considered a flawed democracy is because citizens no longer trust government officials. This distrust in government officials is going to be difficult to change, but that doesn't mean it's going to be impossible. The United States may be a failed attempt at creating a utopian society, but that doesn't mean that we can't change our future actions. Just because the United States has gone through a similar pattern as many young adult dystopian novels doesn't mean it can't happen again. The first line in the Declaration of Independence gives people the permission to dissolve the political ties that exist if it becomes necessary. Sure, it was written to explain why the colony should have permission to break off from the monarchy, but it seems like the founders of the United States were predicting the possible failure of the government they were creating. That doesn't mean we should go and overthrow the government. but it shows that the country that was created as a utopian experiment may have been flawed right from the start. Although I can't prove that the United States was created as a dystopia, the way the country has evolved corresponds to the structure of a dystopian novel. Unlike a dystopian novel, there is no way to know the future of the United States, which means that the citizens can change what happens over the course of the upcoming years. This creates endless opportunities to take what dystopian novels have taught us and apply them to our own lives and change the course of history.